All right. Hi, Nate. Thanks for
Hi,
joining
Jill.
me.
Oh, this is great. It's great to see you even virtually.
Yes, excited to chat. We are talking to you today about brand purpose. We have a lot to dig into. Definitely want to start with the Brands for Better campaign. What inspired it all? Uh, yeah, you kicked that off fast, April.
It did. It came together very fast, and certainly I cannot take full credit for it. But the idea came about, in the early stages of COVID. I think all of us were concerned about so many different things, right? We were concerned about our health, about our families' well-being, our livelihoods, and being in the retail sector. I think one thing that I felt challenged with is what can I do to help? What can I do to make an impact? And so there were a couple of events that happened close to each other that kind of led to the idea, which was, I sat down. I have three sons. I sat them down and I said, "All right, Dad's going to be home more, and you're going to be home from school, and we've got an opportunity to to work on whatever skill you've always wanted to learn." And I don't know how this came about. I don't know if they saw some show, but they decided they wanted to learn how to skateboard, which is interesting because I don't really know how to skateboard either. So I said, "Great, let's figure it out." And so I went on this search trying to find a way to buy from some great skateboarding shop that would be some small kind of maybe a digitally native brand, or and even within 30 minutes of searching, I couldn't find a brand that I really wanted to shop for. I found kind of all these wholesalers and obviously the big players in the space in commerce, and all this shift you hear about Amazon adding 100,000 jobs and Walmart adding 150,000 jobs. And then I did notice all of my kind of peers in this digitally native world all doing their part to contribute to COVID-19 relief. And I thought to myself, there's there's got to be a way to help encourage consumers to find brands that stand for something, brands that stand for the way they treat their employees, the way they treat their supply chain and their partners, and the way that they treat their customers, obviously, to support them in this process and to have those brands stand united in making a difference for brands that were on the fence of donating. And so I just kind of challenged myself. I said, do I know enough brands that I could kind of reach out to? And after sitting down at a computer, I had a list of 110 brands that I had relationships with, and I just started reaching out like crazy, text, email, phone
Yeah.
calls, and quickly we had about 30 brands ready to go, and that's how it kicked off. And it led to 150 brands overall, and almost $4 million of relief funds to COVID-19 related charities.
I mean, it's amazing. Congrats, kudos. Like that's a huge
Thank you.
accomplishment. It happened over the course of a month. Is that correct?
Well, initially kind of, so from idea to launch, I think it was about a week and a half. But then we ended up extending. So we launched officially April 1, and then we were only planning to do it for a month, but the reaction and interest from brands participating and from consumers and press was so strong that we decided to extend it an additional month. So it ended up running for a total of 2 months.
Amazing. Was there any criteria other than a direct-to-consumer brand? Someone, did you find a skateboard brand? I mean,
I looked. I didn't. Oh man, I'm still looking. So if you're out there, great digital native skateboard brand, please let me know.
white
Um,
space in the market.
yeah, exactly. Who knew? But I think in terms of the criteria, we kept it open as much as possible, but we also tried to create some hurdle or bar that brands needed to live up to. And there were a few things that, the main thing was that we wanted brands to be contributing to COVID-19 relief. And they could do that either by donating 2% of their sales for the period of time, or what we call 10% of net proceeds. And it could have been greater than that. The second thing is that we asked all brands to give some customer relief, because customers were also kind of evaluating what they were going to be spending their dollars on and how they were, how they were spending money. We understood that some people weren't spending because of the uncertainty in the market, but for those that were, we wanted to give them some breaks. So there were GWPs, there were straight discounts, there were discounts that were only accessed through the Brands for Better website, which was really cool and unique. And then lastly, we basically said that we asked brands to kind of to be at their best, to support their team, to support their supply chain and manufacturers, and to work to support their customers. And I think those were the main criteria. We also built a Slack group that brought all of the brand leaders together, and an email group. We had several phone calls where we had over 100 participants, CEOs of these brands, including some publicly traded brands with the CEOs joining. It was an incredible initiative, and very, very proud how it came together.
Yes, I was hearing about some of these Slack channels, Slack groups that had emerged since March. I kept saying I would love to be a fly on the wall to hear kind of how it's interesting that you're working together, talking through challenges and strategies together. Was that a first for the industry or for your brand?
Well, I think it just, it certainly wasn't a first to have leaders in a room discussing challenges, but I think what was different about this is that it was led within the kind of coalition. This was not led by some third-party service provider trying to sell all of us something, or an alumni group, or even a shared portfolio investor. This was leaders helping each other. And what was really cool about it is people would ask questions. How are you tackling this problem that might be coming up, or how are you dealing with this HR issue? A lot of people were trying to determine whether or not they would qualify for PPP loans, how to apply for that, how to go through that process. And there was so much noise in the market that this kind of became a center of truth, where there was no hidden agenda. None of us were trying to sell each other anything. We were just trying to help each other, and to support the cause. And I thought it just felt, some nonprofit work can feel a little bit mixed in its approach. This felt very well intentioned, pure.
Yeah. We talked in the past about I guess maybe the questions that arose leading up to April 1st. I know one had to do with competitors. Talk to me about what other questions arose, and how you navigated that or overcame those questions, made it okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it was just such an interesting time. But I can't think of another time, certainly in my lifetime, where there's been such a rallying cry, where everybody could be united against a single thing. And even in the landscape that we're living in right now, so much gets politicized when it comes to standing for something. And this wasn't. Everybody was standing for helping support each other through COVID. And even COVID's become somewhat politicized now. But in those early stages, it was so wonderful that everybody was kind of locking hands. But there were some concerns. Some early brands, including myself, was, well, what happens if we have a competitor join? And so we had conversations around that. And ultimately, I said, I want to proactively reach out to brands that could be considered competitive, because if we truly believe that this is about providing as much relief as possible, then we need to maximize our exposure. Not all of them joined, but many of them did, and I think it created space for brands to feel similarly that way. And this was certainly not just me. The Rhone team pulled a huge amount of the work, but we also had great help from Dagny Dover, another great a women's handbag brand that I love. They did all of the creative and website work. We also had brands step in and help on social media and creating assets, and doing PR work and communications. So it was a team effort for sure.
Yeah. In this kind of high stress time, was it a big decision to maybe add this onto your team's plate? How were they dividing
Yes.
their
Oh
time?
my gosh. Yeah. I think there were a couple of factors going into that. I mean, one, you tend in these situations to kind of focus on efficiency, and with all that uncertainty, I think we felt confident about trying to keep as many people on our team um, really productive and keeping them busy and doing good things. Some of that couldn't be accomplished just by the work that we had. And so Brands for Better was a way of kind of positively contributing to what we were trying to do as a brand and keeping our team really meaningfully engaged. Um, but uh, but certainly there were opportunity costs in making that decision of things that they could be spending their time on. And I think, what I went back to, and people have asked, we ended up at Rhone donating well over six figures in COVID-19 relief. And people have said, well, do you feel like you saw an economic benefit or gain as a result of doing the campaign? And the answer is, I don't know. My guess is probably not based on the initial metrics, but that's not why we did it. Doing the right thing is the right thing to do, no matter if it's kind of economically advantageous or not. And if we couldn't get comfortable with that decision, then we shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. And that's how I felt also about our team's engagement. And I think they felt very similar, even though it might, those first 2 weeks, we were all working so much. My wife was like, I think I might want you to go back to the office schedule. But we were just all working so hard, so many hours to try and get that initial launch off. And but it was work we were happy to do because of the potential impact that it could have.
Moving forward, I guess, what is going to, you kind of alluded to the change, the shift, the fact that things are going to stick this time. I feel like social media and accountability, followers, holding brands accountable is going to play into that a little bit. But what can you, what's your take on whether this will stick? Brands holding true to their values, being more vocal about their values. Where do we go from here?
I think the challenge is that it's easy to put out mission statements and ethos, and I think there are even some brands that had perceptions of being brands that really stood for something, where some of those cracks may have been exposed during a time of economic uncertainty. It's far harder, and by no means in saying this do I think we're perfect, but I do think it's really important to be said. We can put our mission statement on our website. We can, write it on our walls. But if we are not, daily talking about it in our meetings, or, really trying to reinforce it or live it, especially at the leadership level of the company, then it just doesn't matter. And, in times of difficulty or trial, those cracks will be exposed. I don't remember who said it, but I love the quote of, adversity introduces a person to him or herself. And I think that's true about a company too. In moments of adversity, you really get a chance to see who you are, who people that you have around you. How are they going to react when things go wrong, or there's a challenging situation? And so I hope that it sticks. I hope all of us have a chance to look in the mirror. I do also want to make space for the fact that there's a part of this where we can quickly demonize companies, individuals, in an unfair way, where somebody slips and says not exactly the right thing, or we try too hard to rush to judgment and surround people. At the end of the day, this is about seeing each other as humans, about making somebody else's hopes, fears, dreams as real to us as it is to them, and to keep that in mind, whether we're in a digital social media environment, Zoom conference, or something else. It
Yeah.
just it, I hope that if nothing else, this has humanized us to each other. Ironically, even though most of it's happened virtually, our interactions.
Definitely. Is there anything that you've done, or that you feel the need to do in order to, as the pressure is out there and brands are becoming more transparent, it's important to be transparent. Have there been changes that you've had to make in order to do so? Or it's just about, I think you used the word authenticity, like you can be transparent no matter, again, what I ask you, because it's just like true to who you are. But how would you describe, the need for transparency?
I think I think it's important. There is a positive side to this social media accountability, which is, having a social pressure to do the right thing isn't necessarily bad, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you can live in today's world and be a terrible person in terms of the way you treat your fellow employees, in terms of the way you might treat your direct reports, and or how you treat direct customers, and get away with that. 20 years ago, you might have been able to, but people's reputations have a tendency to follow them, for better or for worse, in a way that they just haven't in the past. And I think I think being authentic and being transparent is important, and doing the hard work there. I could certainly cite several examples of some of the work that we've needed to do internally, and that we've spent time on, how we're measuring ourselves, making some of those, you know, corporate social responsibility metrics key indicators in our business of how we're actually performing, in addition to revenue, gross margin, lifetime value. But you know, measuring ourselves on things like diversity, sustainability, giving, and it's important that we track those things, because if we don't track them and we don't spend time on them, they won't change.
Well, thank you, Nate. I think we're all out of time. This was a great discussion.
Well, that went too fast. I'm sorry if I spoke too much, but it's great speaking to you as always.